In the autumn of 1960, 13 faculty members gathered on a windswept stretch of prairie in western Minnesota to begin something no one had quite tried before: to found a new public liberal arts college in Stevens County. They were, as Lucy Imholte would later put it, 13 little lonely people out here on the prairie, and they all wanted the same thing: for the new campus to succeed. Among them was a 30-year-old historian from St. Paul named Jack Imholte, fresh from graduate school, a Korean War veteran with a dissertation still to defend. He brought with him his young wife Lucy, 2 small daughters, and a quiet conviction that an idea worth believing in was worth investing a life in. That investment would become the University of Minnesota-Morris, and for Jack and Lucy, it would become an unexpected home for the next 40 years. John Quinn Imholte, Jack to nearly everyone who knew him, was born on April 8, 1930 in St. Paul, Minnesota, to parents Herbert and Lucille Imholte. Herbert sold automobiles in the city. Jack grew up around that world and would inherit a lifelong interest in cars as a result. After graduating from Cretin High School in 1948, he left home to pursue his academic studies. He attended Ripon College in Wisconsin for 2 years before transferring to Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, where he earned a degree in economics in 1952. His career plans were interrupted by world events when the United States, enacting its broader policy of containment toward the communist threat, engaged its forces in the war between North and South Korea. Jack enlisted in the Army in June of 1952 and served for 18 months. He was deployed to Korea and served in theater as an artillery spotter throughout the conflict. In both April and July of 1953, he fought in the battle for Pork Chop Hill, a series of brutal and costly infantry engagements that led to heavy casualties. He returned home in January 1954 as a young man who had not only studied history, but had lived through it. The experience left an indelible impression on Jack, shaping him as an historian for the rest of his life. After the war, Jack accepted a position at Dun & Bradstreet, where he worked for the next year and a half. Lucy Jude Gibbs was born on March 4, 1933 in St. Paul, Minnesota. Lucy never much cared for her middle name, as Jude was the patron saint of lost causes. She later changed it to Gibbs, her maiden name, when she married. Lucy was the eldest daughter in a large Irish Catholic family. Her father, Edward, was a physician who had practiced medicine throughout the Great Depression. When Lucy was only 9 years old, her mother, Wilma, died of cancer. The loss came at a time when the nation itself was at war, and overnight Lucy assumed responsibility for her younger siblings. Lucy was educated in St. Paul's Catholic schools, including Durham Hall, the girls' counterpart to Cretin, where Jack had graduated a few years before. She trained as a nurse, earning her degree from the College of St. Catherine Nursing School in 1954. She began work at St. Joseph's Hospital, where she would remain until 1960. Lucy and Jack met on a blind double date arranged by Lucy's cousin, Patsy Boyne. The evening must have gone well, since both couples eventually married and the four remained lifelong friends. Jack and Lucy were married on September 17, 1955. Jack later remembered quitting Dun & Bradstreet on Friday, marrying Lucy on Saturday, and starting graduate school the following Monday, this time at the University of Minnesota. He earned his master's degree in 1957 and eventually his PhD in history in 1961. In the spring of 1960, word came through the University of Minnesota's History Department that a new campus was opening that fall in Morris, a small prairie town more than a 3-hour drive west of the Twin Cities. The new campus was an experiment that would turn a 50-year-old high school of agriculture into a 4-year public liberal arts college. The location was also the historical grounds of the former Morris Industrial School for Indians, an American Indian boarding school that operated between 1887 and 1909. The idea was intriguing to Jack, so the young couple drove out to Morris for an interview in his mother's beautiful 4-door sedan, since their own dilapidated vehicle would never have survived the trip. On the way, the vehicle threw a tie rod. With no money to repair or replace the vehicle, they called Jack's father, the auto dealer, who took it in stride and promptly arranged a replacement. They arrived for the interview and met with Rodney Briggs, the campus's first dean and chief evangelist, and stayed for lunch. During the meal, one of Briggs's daughters burst into the room and announced that someone was stealing flowers from the cemetery. Lucy quietly wondered to herself what kind of community this would be if people were robbing the graveyard. Though Jack also had an offer from DePauw University in Indiana, he chose Morris. He later said that he chose it because Rodney Briggs had been honest about one thing in particular. At a brand new campus, an individual faculty member could expect to make a real mark on what the institution would become. Lucy chose Morris because it kept them in Minnesota closer to family. In August of 1960, the Imholtes, along with their 2 small daughters, Rachel and Sarah, moved to Morris and settled into their new life. The prairie was hot, the town was unfamiliar, and Lucy, a city girl from a big family, was, in her own words, horrified, just horrified. In the early days, she felt lonely and isolated. Often, after visiting family in St. Paul, she would cry on the bus bringing her back to Morris. But she was a strong and sensible woman who soon embraced her new community and created a good life. Jack began his tenure as a lecturer in history that fall, one of the original 13 faculty hired to launch the new campus. He was promoted to assistant professor in 1961 and to associate professor in 1963. The same year, he published his first book, The First Volunteers, History of the 1st Minnesota Volunteer Regiment, 1861 to 1865. Between 1962 and 1967, he served as chair of the Division of Social Sciences. He became assistant dean in 1967 and academic dean a year later. When Rodney Briggs departed in 1969, Jack was named acting provost. In 1970, he took the position full-time. The title was later changed to Chancellor, and Jack served in that role until 1989. 20 years at the helm made him the longest-serving chief administrator in the university's history. They were not easy years, but Jack was built to navigate them. He took the helm when student outrage over the Vietnam War was at its peak, and he steered Morris through that turbulence without the violence that consumed many other campuses. He was instrumental in establishing what became the Multi-Ethnic Resource Center in 1973, recruiting William Bill Stewart to lead it. By 1989, 7% of Morris's students were members of racial minority groups, a figure second only to the Twin Cities campus, and 55% of the student body were women. Female faculty had grown from 17 to 25% of the whole. Jack hired Elizabeth Bettina Blake in 1979 as Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Dean, a clear signal of the campus's commitment to gender equity. Blake would later say that no matter how much he would like his own contributions to remain out of the limelight, the fact is that Morris thrives today on principles nurtured under his direction. His colleagues remembered him not only for his steadiness, but also for his sense of humor. Jack was an incredibly decent man, Vice Chancellor Gary McGrath would later say. He had a wonderful sense of humor and never took himself too seriously. When the campus Saddle Club asked Jack to be their faculty advisor, he agreed. When McGrath asked what he knew about horses, Jack thought for a moment and admitted he didn't know a thing, but that he had been called a horse's patootie on more than one occasion. The early 1980s nearly cost him the campus. A statewide budget crisis prompted University of Minnesota President C. Peter McGrath to warn that the coordinate campuses may need to close. When Morris was asked to absorb $270,000 in cuts, Jack quietly went to the local business community and raised the money, a move that spared faculty and staff layoffs. He even offered to cut his own salary by 20%. They weathered the storm, and by the late 1980s, the no longer upstart university was a stable, well-established institution. By the time Jack stepped down, 82% of the incoming class ranked in the top 20% of their high school, and Morris had earned a national reputation as the Harvard of the Midwest, an affordable, high-quality public liberal arts college. While Jack was the public face of the campus, Lucy's contributions were sometimes less visible, but no less essential. She and Jack agreed early on that she would know nothing about the internal workings of the college. No faculty politics, no meetings, no gossip. That clean separation freed her to be the campus's most dedicated unofficial host. Lucy, who had moved from a large city to a small town, believed deeply in hospitality, fellowship, and inclusion. Through thousands of dinners, gatherings, and homecomings, she extended that spirit of hospitality to students, faculty, visitors, and neighbors alike, helping to open both the campus and the wider community to all who the Imholtes welcomed. Through all of the commitments and busyness, Jack and Lucy raised 5 children: Sarah, Rachel, John, Rebecca, and Joseph. As daughter Rachel said, they did what they could to provide a safe and happy home for all of us. We were exposed to a lot of wonderful things: music, visual art, theater, dance, literature. On one occasion, when Jack had to go to the Twin Cities for a Regents meeting, he dropped his daughters, Sarah and Rachel, 12 and 10 at the time, at the Guthrie Theater and told them he would pick them up in a few hours. The play turned out to be A Midsummer Night's Dream, performed largely in the nude. Whether or not Jack knew this in advance, both daughters later agreed it would not have changed his decision. The afternoon became, in Rachel's words, a great experience and an even better memory because it captures so accurately who Dad was. Like most women of her generation, Lucy set aside her own profession when she married. Had she been born at another time, she would have continued her nursing career. But she embraced what she had, made it a good life, and thoroughly used every moment of her time. She had no patience for idleness. Only boring people get bored, she liked to say. When Willie Martin from Willie's Red Owl came to deliver groceries one afternoon and struck up a lengthy conversation, Lucy gently interrupted him, saying, "I'm sorry, Willie, but I can't talk right now. I have a husband, 2 cats, 5 children, and a vacuum cleaner." She taught herself to cane chairs and made all of the chairs in the family's living room. She helped found Ice Cream and Lollipops, an art exhibition that drew Morris school children and their parents into the campus art gallery, and she was an active member of the League of Women Voters. She even served as a chief election judge for 25 years. As a couple and as individuals, Jack and Lucy cultivated rich and varied intellectual lives shaped by wide-ranging interests and deep personal passions. Jack was devoted to rowing, often beginning his days by taking his shell to a nearby lake for a morning of sculling. He loved jazz and classical music, listened to Minnesota Public Radio constantly, adored Gilbert and Sullivan, and was a faithful subscriber to the Guthrie Theater from the day it opened. He attended every play, concert, and game on campus. Everything. He was a connoisseur of beer and of single malt scotch, and at one point drove a turbocharged BMW that horrified Lucy, who would have preferred a sensible 4-door sedan. Lucy listened to WCCO radio, operas, and Irish music. She enjoyed murder mysteries, gardening, antiquing, and going to estate sales. She never learned to drive and was often seen biking or walking everywhere in town. Her happiest summer days were spent at a family cabin shared with relatives on Whitefish Lake. She attended Mass every Sunday and served as a Eucharistic minister in St. Paul. In September of 1989, Jack announced his plans to step aside as Chancellor. 20 years, he said, was more than long enough. Though he spent a year on loan to the Twin Cities campus in the early 90s as interim vice president for student affairs, he otherwise returned to what he called his first love, the classroom. He taught history at Morris until his retirement in 2000, when he moved back to St. Paul to join Lucy, who had returned there in 1996. In 2005, the university honored him by renaming the Social Science Building to John Q. Imholte Hall. In August 2001, Jack sustained a head injury after a serious bicycle accident. The trauma accelerated the onset of Alzheimer's disease, which shaped the last 10 years of his life. But even as the disease progressed, his attention often turned to the people he loved. Whenever his son John came to visit, Jack would ask, "Where's your pal?" holding his hand low to the ground if he meant the grandchildren, or high to indicate John's wife. Jack Imholte passed away in St. Paul on April 20th, 2014, at the age of 84. Lucy moved into memory care in 2019 and passed away on October 12, 2025, at the age of 92. Jack and Lucy Imholte gave 40 years of their lives to a campus that, when they first arrived, had not yet developed fully formed academic departments, graduates, or traditions. Together with the institution's original founders and the local community, they helped build something extraordinary. They left behind themselves a university with a national reputation for excellence, one of the most diverse student bodies in Greater Minnesota, a lasting culture of liberal arts education, and a building that bears their family name. In those 4 decades, they raised 5 children, hosted countless guests, and convinced thousands of students from farms, small towns, and far-flung cities that an institution of higher learning on the prairie was an idea worth believing in. But their legacy also rests in things more subtle. A marriage measured in 3 peck kisses at the door. Children who remember their parents with love and respect. A woman who learned to love a place that once horrified her. And a man whose loyalty and steadiness earned him the lasting respect of his colleagues. Jack and Lucy Imholte made Morris and Stevens County their home. In doing so, they helped make the University of Minnesota Morris a home for everyone who would come after.